Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. Before we get into the heart of this, I'd like to apologize in advance for my voice sounding like this. I've been a little under the weather, lung and voice-wise, the last couple days. Unlike yesterday, I can actually project my voice without it going in and out of tune like a ill-kept trombone. But of course, it's obviously deeper and a little bit more raspier than normal. And of course, if people ask today if this is my real voice, I'm going to feel like my friend Jeff. I'm going to have to come up with excuses, or actually tell him, because unlike the thing I always tell him, I can't go, my real voice is a bit weird. Well, actually that sounded better than I thought it would. That'd actually make a better point. Of course, I think I also sound like that guy from Independence Day. Forget my lawyer. This is a reminder, if you want to support the channel, or make any video requests, the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. And if you join the Patreon, you not only get to request video topics, you also get access to those videos early. Today I'm going to be reviewing another entry in the Universal Mummy series. This is the sequel to the reboot/sequel, because it has nothing to do with the Karloff film. It, of course, is The Mummy's Tomb. Now, this one, it is a step down from the previous one, which, of course, was a step down from the classic one. But that's not to say it's not entertaining. It's still entertaining in that same adventure quality type way. But you could tell, like a lot of the other Universal series films from around this time, the budgets are getting lower. They're more about speeding up how fast the films are shot just to maximize profits. And they're essentially just glorified B-movies. But that doesn't mean they're not entertaining. It's just something you got to take into account if you've only seen like the classics like Frankenstein, Dracula, the original Mummy, the Wolfman, which is from the same time, but it at least is a higher quality. It's like one of the anomalies from this second era, at least this part of it. The other ones are kind of like that. Harold Young is in the director's chair for this one. He directed a good amount of movies in his career. The only name I really recognized was from later, and that was The Three Caballeros. That's that one Disney film where it has Donald teaming up with the parrot and the other bird. You know, we are three caballeros. Probably sing better than Donald does right now anyway. Mr. Young was a former British film editor who, once he moved into Hollywood, he started making B-movies, so that explains why he's in there. Direction-wise, he does a pretty good job, you know, setting up the shots and all that. I mean, he was an editor, so he probably went into the mindset of like, alrighty, if I film it this way, how's it going to be cut together? But, you know, it doesn't really stand out that well. Now, like I touched on in the previous one, you could consider these Mummy movies like a proto-slasher series because of the fact that Kharis is a slow-moving mass killer, technically, because of the makeup and all that, that follows his victims, corners them, and then kills them. And there's a body count. And this film especially, the only reason it really exists, other than, of course, is Universal to make all that money, is to raise the body count. And that's what happens in this film. It's like some of the other slasher films where one character survives one film and then they're killed off in the next one. Like the final girl on Friday the 13th. She's the first victim in Friday the 13th Part 2. Here we get a little bit of that. Of course, it's the 40s, so we're not going to see anybody get their throat slit, get knives to the heart. Even though the original Mummy had a spear going through somebody. Of course, once the Hays Code came into effect, they're like, nope. Once they made the previous film, so they had to edit that part down. They wouldn't have been able to get away with it. Here, our title character, Kharis, the Mummy, is played by Lon Chaney Jr., everyone's favorite monster star of the 40s. This is the first film he made for Universal after renewing his contract following The Wolfman, which is why I think it's pretty appropriate that they reuse a lot of music from The Wolfman, including the main title. Instead of Swan Lake or whatever thing they wrote for the previous one, it's the Wolfman theme. Now, if you don't like music recycling the way that certain film studios will, it might grind your gears a little bit, but for me, it added a little bit to the B-movie charm. Other than staggering around and killing people, Chaney doesn't really have a lot to do, so it is a little bit of a step down from his performance as the Wolfman, but he definitely has more to do than he did in Ghost of Frankenstein. There, all he does is like step right there until the ending where they swap the monster's brain with Igor's, and there he's really chewing the scenery, but his voice is dubbed over, obviously, because it's Igor. Here he has a little bit more to do, but he's essentially just doing the bidding of the new high priest, Mehemet Bey, played by Turhan Bey, who cited this in a 1995 interview as one of the favorite films that he did because he loved playing the character. And he was also, for a time, one of the last actors from these films to be alive, but then he passed away in 2012, if I'm remembering the year correctly. Now, he gets the job of controlling Kharis from George Zucco's character, who somehow survived being shot in the previous film. He was shot multiple times and fell down a bunch of stairs, but he survives. That's one thing about the Universal series. Sometimes continuity is loose, and even when they do keep it, they'll sometimes disregard certain things as long as it fits the story. Like going back to the Frankenstein films, Igor gets killed in Son of Frankenstein, and then he's back to normal, sitting there by the sulfur pit and ghost. No explanation how he survived getting shot. At least there you can understand it. Here, shot multiple times, going down the stairs. Even if he survived the gunshots from that close range and that caliber, I think falling down those type of stairs would probably result in a few broken bones and most likely a broken neck. But in the immortal words of my LARP group, plot is a bitch. Whatever it says goes. He survives if I say he survives. Dick Foran and Wallace Ford also reprised their roles from the previous films, also in slightly aging makeup, because this film takes place 30 years after the previous film. Which, of course, if you take the previous film was taking place in then modern time in 1940, that means this film takes place in 1970, which I guess gives it a more timeless feel, but it's one of those things in retrospect, they're like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it. We can pretend. The only thing I really think that really it takes the time jump out a little bit is the obvious 1940s cars, but like I said, it gives it kind of a timeless feel and does add to the B-movie charm of it. Something you have to notice and note nevertheless. Now the plot is that Bey, our new priest, travels across the sea with Kharis to track down and kill the remaining members of the expedition. So the slasher movie thing, the people that survived the previous film, they're about to die. And it's because of the whole curse thing. They disturbed the tomb, now they gotta die. And to add to it, anyone connected with them has to die. So Dick Foran's son's character, John Banning, who's played by John Hubbard, he has to die too. Anyone connected with him, like any wife or anything, they gotta die. Which ups the body count. That's really the excuse for it there, but it makes for a suspenseful film because you wonder, where's the mummy going to come from? Are the cops going to be able to find the mummy? Will they believe anything? Of course, by the end of it, if you know the tropes in the Universal Monster movies, people do start believing the mummy's there. Because in the end, we do get the stereotypical and cliche mob with torches that are going after the mummy. I guess you could say in the regard they chase into a house, it is a lynch mob, but how do you lynch a mummy? I mean, even if you manage to overpower and capture the mummy like they did the Frankenstein monster and Bride of Frankenstein, it's immortal. The most you put it into is a state of suspended animation if he doesn't have the tanna leaves, which is one thing I didn't mention in the previous review of the previous film. The whole tanna leaves thing, that's what keeps him alive and also puts him at full strength. Now, they do bring it back up. I was worried they weren't going to bring the plot point up, but I think it's by the events of the last film that doesn't really become a plot point anymore. Here, we do see it when we see Bey give him the Kharis, and it is brought up a couple times in the flashbacks and all that, which is an aside. That's probably going to be one thing that some might find annoying, is that the first 10 minutes is essentially just an extended flashback explaining what happened in the previous film. By modern standards, that's lazy, but considering there was no home video back in the 40s and the only way you could see a movie if you did not have your own projector at home and send away to order copies on film was in the theater. And if you missed the movie and you didn't have access to home, you missed the movie. Of course, Mummy kills everybody. He gets killed in the end. And it ends with a happy ending, but of course that is that little thing of like, or is it? I mean, the Mummy gets burned this time, though that's a little bit more final than what happened to him in the previous film. When we know anything about Universal Monsters at this point, is fire really gonna kill it? The monster's dead, but is he though? But nope, we still got 2 more Mummy movies to get through, so obviously Kharis will rise again to kill. Overall, like I said, this is an entertaining film. Its only reason is for money and rising the body count, but it is still fun. If you are a fan of slasher movies, you probably get some enjoyment out of this because you can start to see where some of those tropes and ideas originally originated in. But this is a more primordial, primitive version of it. They wouldn't get refined, of course, until a couple decades later when the slasher movies craze started. You see a little bit more of it with Psycho, like I said in the last review, and then you see some of it start to go a little bit more into the 70s, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Black Christmas, and all them. And then, of course, we get the 80s, which is the slasher heyday. And then, of course, in the 90s, we get the slasher parody with Scream. Do you like the scary movies? And of course, this is also the beginning of the slow, staggering mummy cliche. You got that a little bit in the previous one, but here's where they really up it, because no matter how fast the characters run, Kharis catches up with them and kills them. Which, of course, ties into the slasher cliche. Is like, wait a minute, did he just freaking teleport? Wait, or like Michael Myers in Halloween 6. Like, wait a minute, he was just there and he's back in the house, and why? There's no logic. Of course, that one, you also got the mind control thing, but hey, you guys already know all my thoughts on that in my video essay review. Overall, this does come with a recommendation, mainly for curiosity's sake. If you're not a fan of the use of Universal horror films, probably not the one for you. Probably stick to the previous one and the classic Mummy. But if you are a big fan and you're trying to make your way through them, I would definitely say give the Mummy movies a watch. Especially since each of them are only like around an hour. You can power through them in the same amount of time it would take you to watch one of the longer ones. Like, Gone with the Wind, the Mummy movies.